Hrish, welcome to Stories in AI. And it's now not just stories in AI, it's stories in tech, stories in the metaverse, stories in crypto, stories in quantum, and a whole lot more. Happy New Year to you, and thank you for jumping on the show.
Happy New Year. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here with your audience and to have this conversation. So I've been very excited about this for a while. So thanks again for having me.
No, and it's very timely. I know we tried to actually schedule and get it done back in 2021, and I sound like back in 2021, right? So it's just like 6 days ago. But I really want to, I was really looking forward to this conversation because we want to focus on the metaverse, right? So, but before all that, Rish, why don't you start with your personal story? Give us your amazing story, and there's I don't want to say it and butcher it. So why don't you give us your story?
Yeah, sure. I've one. I'll tell you from the straight off the bat that I'm a global nomad. Always living around the world. I love the world. I love cultures, people, languages, and always have. And so building a company like SuperWorld, which we'll get into, is really part of my heart. But in terms of my background, I was born in India. Grew up in the United States, in Houston. I went to Rice University in Houston, grad school in Illinois. But between college and grad school, did get a chance to live in Madrid and Paris and London, and kind of do a lot of
Very nice.
travel and started off my career. I'm Indian, so it was kind of like being a doctor was the route that I was on. I was doing an MD, MPH, MBA. In fact, in college, I used to take out eyes for transplant surgery. So very
Wow.
hardcore into medicine. But I'd gotten a grant to do an MBA from the
I,
National Institutes of
I
Health.
tried poking eyes, but that was while I was learning kung fu. Right, different problem. But
I know
anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
I've tried that move,
That one.
karate. Yeah, but yeah. So I kind of went on this other path after doing the MBA and ended up doing consulting. Worked on Wall Street for a while. I was in UBS and HSBC in New York. Started off in public finance, corporate finance, and M&A. It's funny, I started off in real estate investment banking, and we're doing virtual
Wow.
real estate now in Superworld. So, life kind of plays jokes on you that way.
Full circle. Yeah.
Yeah. And then got into venture capital in New York for a number of years, investing across tech and biotech. Had a crazy idea about 12 years ago, probably one of the first of my crazy ideas, which was, wouldn't it be cool to go somewhere in the emerging markets and start a VC fund? Got on a plane, didn't know anyone, went to Ukraine, Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Moldova. Took me about a year and a half, but I started a venture capital fund in Ukraine, backed by a very big investor named Victor Pinchuck out there. He's the guy who backs Yuri Milner at DST.
Yep.
And so I started a VC fund in Ukraine. Also got involved in helping to start one in Belarus called Tech Minsk. Then was
Nice.
early at a company called TopTal, which is a talent marketplace backed by Andreessen. Helped grow and scale that company. I was their first biz dev. And then about 6 years ago, started a company called Rogue Initiative Studios, which is a film, television, gaming, and virtual reality studio in Hollywood. My co-founder produced Call of Duty, Modern Warfare series, and Ghosts. And then my production partner there is
Yep.
Michael J, the action director. And so at that company, we produce franchises, feature film, television, gaming, virtual reality, all the way to amusement park rides and toys. And that was kind of what got me into AR and VR. Rogue is backed by a lot of the top AR, VR venture capital funds in Silicon Valley and globally. And so I got into that space. And, again, Pokemon Go came out and kind of opened up my eyes to what can be done in the real world. And that's where Superworld comes from.
Got it. That's the origin story of Superworld. And we'll get into it. But before that, I mean, first off, fascinating background, right? Like you, digital nomad, lived in many places, experienced different cultures. Have even in the whole process given back to some of those cultures, new cultures that you actually go in, starting venture capital, starting businesses, and so forth. And just fascinating, moving from healthcare and medical education to poking eyes, of course, right, to going into Wall Street and real estate investing, to venture capital, to coming back to now digital real estate, right? Now, before we all go there, like a lot of buzzwords here that I want to, you will hear and we're all hearing every day. One of that is the metaverse, right? And obviously the other thing is fintech and crypto and other things as well. But let's focus this discussion on the metaverse. So, what the hell is the metaverse? Give us your viewpoint there.
Yeah, the metaverse is really the next stage of the internet. It is an interface that allows us to, again, virtually or in the physical world, interact in a persistent way across platforms, across interfaces, hardware, software, blockchain. It kind of brings everything together. It's the combination of all virtual worlds. It's it is there is one metaverse, and there's lots of virtual worlds, lots of ways to access
Hmm.
that metaverse.
It's interesting. So, I mean, I think it was Sean Puri who wrote this long Twitter thread, which has
Yeah.
got a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mentions, and he talks about this thing like the metaverse is not your Ready Player One, as everybody is thinking. It's not just the virtual world, and you actually called out a couple of things in this description of how you describe metaverse as a persistent interface to different virtual worlds and the physical world
Mm-hmm.
when when you go more digital than physical, right? And Sean's definition of the metaverse was like it's a point in time where people spend more time in the digital worlds or digital interactive mechanisms than
Mm-hmm.
in physical mechanisms, right? So, um, but you mentioned persistent, and you mentioned some kind of a common way to interact with different virtual worlds. Well, that's
Mm-hmm.
not where we are today, right? I mean, where are we in that journey of building the metaverse?
Yeah. So, again, there are things I think that we are enabling now, utilizing Web3, utilizing immersive computing, whether it's VR or AR, utilizing AI and other technology that is moving us closer and closer to the vision that we described before. And again, those things are coming in combination with each other, which we're seeing now. A lot of these trends and these waves kind of again building upon each other. But I think as the technology, whether it's AR and VR, whether it's getting onto Web3, it's still a very high friction process to be able to utilize some of these wallets and get onto crypto.
Yeah,
And the interoperability is still challenging in many ways. And so again, we're moving further and further down this vision, and it's moving very rapidly. But I
very
would say,
fast.
yes, you're right. Yeah, it's coming.
It's funny. No, I think, was it the Electric Capital that published a report yesterday on basically where's the developer momentum in crypto, and it's just insane amount of people, new people
Mhm.
jumping on to you know picking up Web3 stack. Like I remember having interacting. I was looking at some M&A, and there was a bunch of entrepreneurs who had started companies in who a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, in machine learning based products. Applied AI is my space, right? So I was looking for really
Yeah.
small niche capabilities to acquire. And they were all like, "Oh, I'm ready to sell. What are you going to do next?" And they're like, "I want to go build Web3 apps," right? Just
Mhm.
like everybody's just like saying, "I'm just moving in." And to me, that is a very strong indication because developers are a huge leading indicator where the momentum is going to be, right? So no, fascinating. I think the metaverse. You're right. It's like the building blocks. I love how you framed it. Right, there is all these building blocks that are independent paddle threads that are already in progress. The Web3 momentum, immersive computing. I mean, I can. 6 years ago, I remember, I was looking at a VR-based physical business at that time, and I remember having to carry around like computers on your back to be able to, be in your HTC Vive or something. Like no
Yeah.
longer, right? So the form factor shrinking, the goofy looking glasses are going to go away. We're going to start getting better AR interactive interfaces and so forth. And the field that I'm in AI, progress has been pretty astounding over the last decade or so, right? So building blocks are all independently having together. I think the opportunity as well as where the momentum is going to be, how do you package it all together to make that experience and focus back on the user and not so much the technology, the
Mhm.
real world versus just the virtual world, or a physical world versus virtual world, if you will, right? Um,
Yeah.
why now though? I mean, like, what is specific around this phase? I mean, is it just the I can see a lot of fingers pointing to, I mean, the COVID really changed the dynamic, right? But what are your thoughts? Why now? Why did all these
Mhm.
things have been happening for a while?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of technology inflection points that are really coming together, right? So in 2015, you saw on the hardware side, 2014, 15, Oculus being acquired by Facebook.
Yeah.
Facebook really kind of putting a lot of investment into the VR hardware space. That really drove a lot of innovation on that side. Again, culminating in what we're at right now with Oculus Quest, which has really,
Yep.
I think, increased the number of headsets in the marketplace dramatically, and is really getting people into immersive commuting. I think on the software side, we saw AR Kit come out from Apple in 2017, AR Core from Google in 2018. 5G technology on mobile definitely is allowing people to access this type
Bandwidth.
of bandwidth. Um, on the Web3 side, you're seeing as you mentioned, the increased development on Web3, as well as just the consumer mainstream attention to Bitcoin and the ICO
Yes.
craze, but more so just the fact that people are realizing that there's some merit here in the broader consumer space in the opportunity that Web3 represents. And then, to your point, there is a lot of, sociological, mainstream understanding of virtuality in our daily lives. We're, on this Zoom call, and people spend now most of the day on Zoom calls because they have to be.
Yeah.
However, they're also realizing that, like, actually in some ways it is a preference, right? Some people, a lot of people don't want to commute and don't want to go into physical locations, and having that flexibility is important. And so I think my mom telling me, "Oh, I understand SuperWorld now," was for me the icing of the cake during the middle of COVID, a year or two ago, when I realized, wow, okay,
I
there's
mean,
yeah.
it makes it worth it,
Yeah. Exactly.
That's awesome. No, you're right. I think it's a culmination of, as you said, technology inflection points,
Yeah.
um, changes in socio behavioral elements of people, and then the goddamn virus, right? I mean, we can't the big elephant in the room, right? Just completely
Yeah.
force functioned everything, and
Yeah.
just shrunk the timeline that you otherwise have. That's pretty
Yeah.
exciting. Now, let's shift gears into Superworld, right? Tell us
Mhm.
the origin story of Superworld. And before you start, when you and I met, first, early this year or late last year, or actually
Mhm.
not this year, last year, early last year, right? And what really excited me about this whole notion, because I always knew that it was like, look, the virtual world, Ready Player One world, is not going to be the final destination. It was like, everybody thinking everybody's going to be. It's like any other particular technology evolutions, right? Where you have this real far-fetched view of everything being binary on one side, and then the reality is the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? So you were not. What really excited me was the fact that you were not just building another Decentraland or Minecraft VR and stuff, right? But you were layering a digital universe on top of the physical world, in a sense, right? And that
Yeah.
really, really resonated with me. And full disclosure for the audience, I'm an investor. I'm a proud investor in Superworld. And
Thank you.
so, tell us the origin story. Give everybody that origin story. How did Superworld come about? And you kind of touched upon this a little earlier. And where are you guys right now?
Yeah, and thanks for your support. And really, again, I think the idea here is, you know, it sounds ironic, but we're building a virtual world that focuses on people's real lives, and how do we enhance the real world? And that is what makes us different. Is that, a lot of people call Superworld the gateway to the metaverse because, a lot of our super citizens, as we call them, are first enchanted and attracted to some of these technologies, but don't know how to kind of take that first step into Web3 or AR, VR or AI. And so what we're doing is, again, by building an interface that allows them to, again, create, discover, and monetize anything, anywhere in the real world in this immersive computing sense, but also by utilizing Web3, be able to have an ownership of those real world locations and be able to, again, become a stakeholder in all of that monetization and activity that's happening in the real world. And so, I think our vision was, we want to serve as a very open metaverse. So again, we're very close to all the other virtual worlds out there, but those
Mhm.
worlds are very niche communities in many ways, right?
Yes.
There's users that like Decentraland or Sandbox, or there's a number of other
Yep.
virtual worlds out there. And I think our vision at Superworld is, how can we get our users who are, again, mainstream, consumers who are interested in virtuality, in accessing how to improve their life, how to enhance their life using these technologies, getting them on board. And if they want to, a lot of them want to go deeper. They want to get into DeFi. They want to get into AR and VR and doing, AR content. A lot of this technology is being democratized because you can have
Mm.
LiDAR now on your phone. You can scan something and turn it into an AR object. You can scan your apartment and upload it, right? And so, what we're doing is enabling people to, again, create, discover, and monetize anything, anywhere, and be able to have ownership of the world around them.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So you used a lot of big words there, right? Monetizing and ownership,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
while I understand conceptually that for the audience, and explain that,
Mhm.
I'll explore that a little bit more, right? You have a
Mhm.
physical world, and let's
Mhm.
say that mapping of the physical world, you own a digital asset that is the mapping on the super world network, that you own
Yeah.
that, right? And
Mhm.
so your monetization now is
Mhm.
possible only within the Superworld network, or is it possible outside of the Superworld network? Number one. Second
Mhm.
question is ownership. So how does this ownership work when
Mhm.
it's when it's a purely virtual world? It's very
Mhm.
easy for people to comprehend because it's just you're just
Mhm.
owning a piece of virtual asset. It doesn't exist anywhere else. But if I'm
Yeah.
owning, and I do own some parts of where I grew up, like my streets that I grew up in
Mhm.
Superworld, right?
Mhm.
How does that translate to the physical world? And give us a little bit of color there.
Yeah. So, on that first question, first of all, just to define what it is that you're
Yep.
owning a longitudinal, latitudinally bounded block on the surface of the Earth.
Yep.
That is a block of quote unquote virtual real estate that covers
Yep.
the Earth at a specific location, on the Superworld platform. And it's
Yep.
structured as an NFT, a non fungible token, which is a
Yep.
programmable digital asset. In our case, we've built on Ethereum. So you're buying what's called technically an ERC 721 token. And that
Yep.
token gives you a right to gain a share of any of the monetization activity that happens on the Superworld platform. So anything that we earn in monetization at that location is shared with the owner of the virtual land there. Advertising, digital commerce, e-commerce, gaming, analytics, data, anything that we can result in revenue in that location, we're sharing with the owner of that block of virtual land. Now, the second question was, is that within the Superworld platform? And, how does that relate to the physical world? Now, I think that the really compelling big idea here is that if you're creating a virtual interface that sits on top of the real world. First of all, that virtual content and virtual interaction can have real world relevance. Now, I'll give you an example. Like, we just sold an NFT a couple of weeks ago, from a luxury club in New York and Miami called Custom House. And they sold a digital NFT that, once you buy that virtual digital object, you're getting access to their club in Miami,
Right.
right? And so again, the idea is, how do we create real world utility from virtual items? And then that goes vice versa, right? You can walk
Yep.
into a coffee store or go for a run, and you can achieve something, a bonus point. Maybe Nike wants to pay you in a token, or give you some kind of virtual prize or reward for doing that. So now you're going from the physical analog world, doing
Yep.
activities, and being able, and you want to connect into the SuperWorld platform because you want to get that virtual, benefit of that activity. So now we're bringing together virtual, physical, physical, virtual.
That is awesome. Superworld being the gateway to the virtual worlds or to the metaverse itself.
Yeah.
Now, how are people coming onto the platform? What do they buy? How do they get started? How much are they buying on an average? And what do they do with it after?
Yeah. So, I think it probably be useful. I'll just give you kind of high level about user behavior,
Yeah.
and that what we're seeing. And so, I think the first thing that we're really excited about is when anyone understands what we're doing here and the things I just described and the things that we're going to be
Yep.
talking about today. The first thing that I hear from everyone, and this is great because I hear this in direct quotes all day from everyone, is, which is, this blows my mind. Okay. And I hear people say it, and it just, it makes me happy because I hear it so much. So people are very galvanized and excited about this once they understand what we're doing, especially if they own a business, they're a creator, they're an influencer, they're, you name it, right? So they see the opportunity to create, discover, and monetize anything, anywhere, and actually have ownership is something that, really is game changing for them, right? Number
Yeah.
two, they tell me that they've told everyone they know. They say this in direct quotes. I've told everyone I know about this. I've told my grandmother about, like, literally they're
Yep.
telling people close to them about the opportunity and what this is. And why that's important is that it's a very viral story. We get covered so much in the press, fortunately. It's because they own real estate in Superworld. Their best friend, their mother, their parent family owns real estate in Superworld. And so they want to tell the story of what's happening, right? And so
Yeah.
that's very exciting. And then number three, back to your question specifically, people definitely are buying places that they understand and know. So they're very, very specific about where they buy. If I ask someone, where are you buying? They're going to be very specific about, specific locations in the world. They're going to know many of their locations, right? And then
Yeah.
importantly, they're going to tell me the why. Like, what is the exact kind of personal connection? And so why that's important is, if you look at the broader NFT space, you hear people talking about, I don't know about this, but I think it's going to go up in value. I don't know a lot about this art or something, but I think
Digital
it's going to
connection.
go up. Here, it's slightly different. The user behavior is, they covet these places. They're very, again, very, very much connected personally to these places, and they
Yep.
brag about it, and they spread it. And then most importantly, Ganesh, is they're telling us very specifically what they want to build there. If they're an artist, they want to create NFT art and put it there. If they're a musician, they want to do a live concert. If they're an educator, they want to create educational experiences. If they are a business owner, they want to, promote their business and have access. If they're a government, they want to build an embassy. Barbados is building an embassy in Superworld. So that's really
That
great
is
for us, is that, yeah. And then to
that-
answer the other question, our average paying user spends about $3,900 in the first month on the platform, does about 10 to 15 transactions. And again, is very excited about going deeper. So this is their first interaction. They've just opened up a wallet. They have Ethereum, and they want to start getting into AR and VR. They want to start, getting into DeFi. They want to go on and get more crypto. So they want to enter these other worlds. And that's where the gateway to the metaverse really comes in.
That's amazing, Rish. And I think this is it's really fascinating how you're right. It blows your mind when you think about it, right? Because you're truly getting people who are not in it just from a perspective, I'm going to trade a new NFT and make money on it. You're trying to get the a different kind of users who's got a passionate, intimate relationship with a physical location. So again, going back to the original promise that I'm going to try to actually use allow you to have a gateway into the virtual worlds or the metaverse, but have utility in the real world. And that utility in the real world doesn't come just to the place, but also to the people living in the real world, knowing that it's the part of the land that they actually know and so forth, right? So there's so
Yeah.
many different little things out there that really makes this a very strong case for most people wanting to get in. Is there anybody else doing what you're doing, right? From mapping the physical world?
Yeah. And there's a number of companies in the space now that again are doing things totally virtually as we talked before, and then totally on virtually on top of the real world. There's a company called Upland. There's a company called Earth
Yep.
Two. And there's a number of companies that are kind of sprouting up in this space. Again, our focus at SuperWorld, in our differentiating factor, I would say is again, this is we're focused on the real world. There's a number of companies there that are kind of more of a gamified approach here, kind of a
Yep.
kind of property trading or kind of a gamified thing. And I think that like what we're really trying to do is say, hey, very expansively, what we want to do is one, be very open. We want to enable anyone to utilize all the technologies that are available in the marketplace. And this isn't just about the real estate itself necessarily, but it is about, again, how do you enable people to pursue their passions? Some of our investment partners call this passionware. And as AI and machine learning is really, kind of going to be replacing a lot of mundane potentially jobs that are out there. What we want to do is provide an open way for
Yep.
anyone to again create, discover, and monetize and do those things in real world spaces. And I'll say one other comment about this that I didn't say before is I think ultimately what we're creating here is a movement. And the movement is how can we empower people and how can we better the world? How do we, build a better world? And so again, we're launching a token. There's a lot to Superworld that isn't just technology specific. It is
Sure.
we're embracing all technologies. We're bringing together people. Governance is a big part of this. DAO structures are going to be a big part of this. Really creating a community of people that want to improve the world and empower people.
Oh, it's fascinating, Rich, and it's very noble of you actually also to think about it because I mean, technology is impacting the world, and it's left to
Mhm.
us technologists who are deep into it to make sure that we're impacting it the right way, right? I mean, and then to start early rather than trying to think about it after you become like a Facebook or a Twitter, right? Because it is harder because then you have corporate shareholders to actually deal with and things like that, right? So, with
Mhm.
one thing that one of my personal critiques on uh, more a self critique than anything else on the fact that we are going into a world where all of us and our children, we both have young children, will be spending more and more time in the virtual universes, the metaverses, and in digital worlds more than
Yeah.
they'll be spending time in the physical world, right? So it's also all the more important to make sure that we provide the right framework for them to go do it. And I know you are doing a lot of work. Superworld is also doing a lot of work with,
Mhm.
I want to say UNICEF and some of the other organizations around the world. So talk to a little bit about
Mhm.
some of those specific initiatives. I love that tokenization example. Explore that a little bit more for me. And more also from a perspective of how do other
Mhm.
founders and other entrepreneurs look at this and say, what can I do to impact the world positively while I'm building out my company and building out my business?
Yeah, and thanks for bringing this up in a deeper way. There was a movie, the documentary that came out called "The Social Dilemma" a couple of years ago that very
Yep.
strongly kind of influenced my thinking around what's happening in this space. And it was a very powerful movie that I recommend everyone to watch. But
Yeah.
the idea there, the upshot of that was, we're all kind of living in these algorithmic bubbles. We're staring at our phones all day. We can't have like real conversations with everyone because we're kind of looking at our phones, and also, teenage kids are obsessed with the next Instagram or TikTok posts, right? And the thing that we really care about is, how do we enhance people's real lives? As I said, how do we enhance the real world? And so we're very, very focused on figuring that out, and focusing the efforts on the company on the real world. It sounds ironic to build a virtual world that's focused on the real world, as I said, but that's what we're doing. And so, number one, that's been a focus from the very beginning, because of, I think, the importance of kids, and us even as adults, our ability to kind of live in the physical world. So I'm a humanist. I'm a technologist, but I really want to build this in the proper way. And then the second part of that question, there's organizations like Conscious Capitalism.
Yep.
There's a number of. I just spent a week with Richard Branson, and he's doing amazing things with Virgin Unite and the Elders. And these are he's a hero of mine. There's other people around the world, that are again, creating businesses, in ways that I think are very positively impactful to the world and to people's lives. And I think that as technologists, we have the opportunity, to really build businesses that actually have a very impactful, positive benefit, and also again empower people and enable monetization and enable us to build livelihoods. And we're seeing that in the play to earn movement in gaming. And I think back to
Yep.
tokenization that you brought up, we can apply all those token mechanisms, which is what we're doing, to real world activities, the things that people are really, excited about in their real lives. But that's analog. That isn't really being
Yep.
recorded. That isn't really being, again, incentivized, or bringing potential virtual kind of benefits, as I mentioned. And I think we can bring all these things together, and that's, I think, the vision of the metaverse in a very positive way, that it's not
Yeah.
sucking you into this digital interface, but it's really, how do
Yep.
we bring that digital virtual technology, all of these kind of interfaces, worlds, et cetera, to our real lives.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating, Rich, and no, totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. The one other critique though of that thing is there's
Yeah.
also this notion of monetizing is
Mhm.
a very capitalist mentality, right? How do
Mhm.
you actually enable and empower opportunity and
Yeah.
monetization? One of
Mhm.
the big critiques that are happening from the Web 2 stalwarts on the Web 3 movement right now is that,
Mhm.
look, are you trying to monetize everything and everybody and every instance and everything that you have, that you're kind
Mhm.
of losing out the sense of community in the process, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, I still don't know which side of the argument that I'm really on, but then there is that element of shared
Mhm.
success that comes with community that needs to be imbibed into the monetization
Mhm.
strategies that we use in the Web 3 stack, if you will. Don't you think?
I 100% agree with that. It's about heart, it's about community, it's about people loving what they do, and it's not just about monetization per se, but it's about, I would say, becoming a stakeholder in what you're
Yeah.
creating, being able to be involved in creating, quote unquote assets, or content or experiences that have immutability, that have interoperability, that have,
Yeah.
again, the ability to take those things that you're creating to other places. And again, really, I think decentralization, is really opening a lot of people's eyes to the power of creators, and the ability for anyone, to again be empowered to create, and
Absolutely.
to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the opportunity equalization that is happening, right?
Yeah.
Everybody now has the opportunity, and that's
Hmm.
what, like, the internet opened up, and decentralization and
Yeah.
Web3 really, blows it out and makes it available for everybody. Rich, this has been fascinating. What else should I be asking you about Superworld or the metaverse?
I think that one of the things that we really love at Superworld is the fact that we build Superworld together, right? So the concept is, we're building a virtual world on top of the real world, and that means that the opportunity uh, for anyone to utilize these technologies is limitless, because there's a lot of
It is.
technologies in play here, right? And so for us, it's really activating your audience and all of the different audiences around the world that care about again, building a better world, and again, leveraging all of these tools and technologies that we have in a positive way. And so again, I think a very important part of this mission is how do we get people around the world together into Superworld, help them, learn and be educated about the opportunities here. I think accessibility is very important. We
Yeah,
want to make it as accessible as possible. It's free to use Superworld. It's you can create. So these are all things that we're really very excited about.
that's awesome, Rich. And I think, one of my focus with this effort, this whole media effort with stories in AI and stories in tech in general, is to get more and more people participate and help shape and be stakeholders in this, like, one of the most historic movements that are
Mhm.
happening in history, right? I mean, like, we live in some amazing times. Then, every 10 years is kind of, I don't know, quadrupling the level of productivity, the level of, opportunity for everybody. And there's so many that the world is opening up so much opportunities. And
Mhm.
I sincerely worry about a portion of the society, and it always will be, but a large portion of the society will be left behind, right? And
Mhm.
so all of this are efforts to actually bring more and more people into the fold. We also don't
Mhm.
want a small group of people just making all decisions for everybody else around the
Yeah.
world. We saw how that played out with Facebook. But in general, I think that's the whole idea. How do you recommend people to get started with getting engaged into this emerging new world of the metaverse, right? Outside
Mhm.
of, Superworld app as well. What's your advice for someone getting started to say, how do I get involved here?
Yeah. So, again, I think that Web3 and all of these technologies, AR, VR, AI, I think a lot of the amazing topics that you cover on your podcast are all available. They're moving so fast. I think the biggest lesson, I think we learn in this space is, it's never too late to start. It's still early. And, the sooner that you start, if you're passionate about a specific area, whether it's blockchain or AR or whatever, one of these areas
Yeah.
here, I think it's really, try to go online, try to learn. There's a lot of free courses out there, whether you're interested in the business side of this, whether you're interested in programming, whether you're interested in, kind of marketing, or other aspects of, the space. I think that, one is to just educate yourself, and there's a lot of resources out there. We're happy to, again, get anyone who's interested, reach out to us. We're happy to get you to educational resources. But the idea is, educate yourself, and then you'll find very quickly, as we all know, is you can become an expert fairly quickly, just because there's so many small niches here and so many areas of opportunity. And if
Yeah.
you're a builder or creator, or an entrepreneur, um, there's opportunities to innovate. And again, we're super open ourselves at Superworld. So, again, happy to help in that regard if people want to build or are excited about partnering. But, I think the opportunity is really out there, and it's really just take that first step, and then you take the second step. And, it really
Get
is a
started.
iterative. process. So that's what I recommend. Just jump in and take that step, educate yourself.
Awesome, Rich. I mean, just
Yeah.
do it. Just like the Nike
Yeah.
slogan, just do it,
Yeah.
right? Don't overthink it,
just,
just do
yeah. Just do it.
it. No,
And go after your passions, do what you love. And there's a lot of
that is awesome.
opportunities in technology to kind of go after those things. So.
Awesome. Rich, one last final question, and really the last one this time. Um, Personal question. What is a personal power practice that you employ?
Yeah, I'm very into this kind of stuff, so it's a very interesting question that you asked me. But I definitely am into meditation, into
Yeah.
yoga, into exercise, and so it's very important for me on a daily basis to go get a workout in, go lift weights, do meditation, do yoga. I think getting kind of unplugged and getting away from your devices and again working on kind of the inner part of you
Yeah.
is I think where everything is, right. It's all kind of within you,
Yep.
and so as you become more comfortable with that, and mindfulness, and a lot of the terms that are in this space are important, that I think it's really about kind of being able to be in the now, and to be able to in terms of your physical body as well, be
Yep.
again, your nutrition and health and all of this stuff is very important, so very much a focus of mine.
That is awesome, Rich. And it's actually it's fascinating if you really think about, if you want to make it big in the new internet, and like where the world being your opportunity landscape. What you really have to do first is to know yourself, right? Isn't that really fascinating that you have to know your strength, you have to find that niche where you're really good at, so you're going to
Mhm.
exploit it and scale it across the technology
Mhm.
mediums, right? And in a weird sort of way, when you're all plugged in and trying to figure out, how do I do this, what you really have to focus on is go back, look within, right? And that's, it just kind of puts a bow on what we just talked about. So, Rish, this has been fascinating. How can the viewers and listeners get in touch with you? Where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, so HRISHLOTLIKER, first name, last name. LinkedIn's a great place. If you want to reach me directly at SuperWorld, I'm at CEO@superworldapp.com. We'll always answer your questions, and happy to work with anyone
Awesome.
that's excited about what we're working on. But all over the net, you can find me. I'm on every social network out there, I think.
That is awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. Rish, this was fascinating. I think we're all in it for a lot of fun in the metaverse. We're already going there. We're already halfway there, and we're making it easier, simpler, and exciting for everybody to participate in the journey. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Can't wait to be on again. And I'm a big fan of your show, so appreciate the opportunity to tell
Thank
our
you.
story.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rish.